All right. Well, welcome everyone. It's a lot of gratitude for you all to be here today, and especially to Stefanie and Ginna. Um, I really just want to start. We want to start by just taking a moment of silence for the lives lost and the violence. And I was reminded that today is the 5th year anniversary of the Tree of Life shooting. So if we can just take a moment of silence for those who are no longer with us. All right. I know we could use a lot more of that, I'm sure. So it really is great to be in community with folks I know and folks I don't know. So thank you again for being here. For those who don't know me, my name is Seth Linden. I'm the founder and principal of Gather Consulting. The other hat I wear is I'm the board chair of Jewish Studio Project, and I sit on the board of Jewish Long Beach, which is our Federation Foundation JCC here in Southern California. I'm also the father of 2 boys. I'm a husband, friend, a community member, and I'm sure we all are wearing multiple hats today and always. For those who are new, so BoardTalk is a space to share ideas and resources around nonprofit governance and connect with and learn from other board members. We've been doing this since COVID and relaunching now, because if not now, then when? And I just want to share just a few notes. Boards have a responsibility to step up now and always. Boards, a friend, actually, Lisa, your colleague and boss, Phil, has shared that boards are like stewards on airplanes. You hope to never see them except only in emergencies. And I also think boards are like a community. They're a cohort. They're a staple of democracy. And so I think we need them now. We need good governance now more than ever. As many know, in crisis, crisis is danger and opportunity. And I just want to lift up that there is opportunity here. What this session is not going to be is education or advocacy around Israel, Palestine, Hamas, Gaza, etc. What this will be is education and advocacy for effective governance, for good decision making, strong leadership models, policies, and values. We're super lucky to have Ginna and Stefanie here. Before we introduce them and they introduce themselves, would love to just share in the chat who's here so folks can see. And maybe if you can take a minute and type your name, type your role or your organization. I'm going to do it as well, and type your city just so we can see who's here. I know there's CEOs, there's board chairs, there's board members, there's consultants, there's funders, there's nonprofit leaders in this space. Take a sec just to identify yourself in the chat, because this is a great community of learners and leaders here. Before we even get to any of the discussion, one thing that we've done at BoardTalk is just have like a quick 5-minute breakout so folks can connect with one another as human beings and as nonprofit leaders. So I am going to do my best, and this is a low production show, right? This is just me here. So I'm going to create, let's see, 13 breakouts, and we're going to have 5 minutes literally to chat with someone you probably don't know. Hopefully you don't know. Introduce yourself, who you are, why you're here, how you're doing as a human being, and how you're doing as a nonprofit leader in this time. And take those 5 minutes, and we'll come back and we will begin the session. Any questions? That all sound good? All right. I'll see you all in 5. Hey, Kev.
Hey.
Mulu. Yeah, I'm gonna put you guys in a room right here.
Great. Thank you.
I'm gonna assign you here. Shoot, can I add a room? Yeah. Oh, perfect. I'm gonna assign you to room. There we go. Got it. Thank you. Bye. You see that, Kevin? Hi, Cedra. I'm gonna assign you to oh, there we go. You see that room 13?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes, I was there, but no one else was. So I'm happy to chat with myself this morning or just hang out.
No, let's see. Let's see. I'm gonna move you here. I got you. Give me one
Okay.
sec.
No worries.
He's there now. He's there now.
Oh, okay. Cool, cool.
Go there.
Brady Bunch. Woohoo!
Welcome back. If you want to say thanks to your partner via chat, that's always nice. Hope that those 5 minutes or so were a nice connection. Okay, so we now get to talk to our special guests. You have their bios, so I'm not going to read them. I just want to share a couple points of connection between Ginna and Stefanie. So Ginna Green is the board chair of Bend the Arc. She, among many other things, she's board chair of Women's March. She was the former chief strategy officer at Bend the Arc, and now is a partner at Uprise. I met Ginna, and where are you, Ginna? So I can. Okay, there you are. There you go. Hey, I need to pin you up here. Ginna and I met through a mutual friend a little while ago, a few years ago. And we have both been, we were at the community gathering together. We both applied unsuccessfully for an RFP, which was a fun activity and exercise. We both saw each other at Jewish Funders Network. So Ginna, thank you so much for being here. And Stefanie is CEO, and let me pin Stefanie so I can look at you coming up. There you go. Stefanie is the CEO of Slingshot for 17 years. Is that right? I think. No.
I've been here for 8, but I've been in philanthropy for.
Okay, 8 years. Sorry. Philanthropy for 17 years. You're a leader among the young philanthropy movement and a leader in the Jewish community. I met Stefanie a while back through when I was at Jim Joseph, and I've always just been very inspired by you and your work. We also share a mutual friend and connection, Gamal Palmer. Actually, that could be a through line for the three of us. And Stefanie and I have had many board conversations over the years. So thank you, Stefanie, for being here. And just to both of you, just so much gratitude. We were just talking before we came on. I think every leader right now is kind of in an impossible position. Leadership is challenging as is, and today even more so. And so thank you for just your incredibly smart, successful, visionary leaders. You have incredible histories and, trajectories, both with vast experience working on boards, working with boards through COVID, through social justice movements, in and out of the Jewish community, and the young philanthropy movement. So I just, again, a lot of gratitude. And the 26 of us are very lucky to be in conversation with you today. So welcome. Folks, I have a few questions for the both of you, and then we're gonna just open it up to the group to ask. And so Ginna, maybe just to start with you, can you just share what it's been like over the past couple weeks for you, your board, and your organization?
Ooh, yeah. First, thank you, Seth, for having the idea to have this conversation and for reaching out. And thank you all for hopping on it with 2 days notice. Like, I don't know if we learned something here. Maybe that's when we should start inviting people to stuff. I don't know. But really delighted actually to be able to be in this space with this group of people who care so much about organizations who do really important work in our communities. So I will just say, for me, it has been exhausting and time subsuming. Like I feel like there's been a break, sort of a space-time continuum, and like everything takes longer, everything's taking more time, everything's taking more energy, and it still feels like the same amount of movement is happening. So it's felt really hard physically. It's also been confusing and unmooring for people. I think that the last 3 weeks have percolated questions about people that we thought we knew, organizations that we thought we knew, beliefs that we thought we held, beliefs that we thought other people held. And that has put a lot of pressure on the work and relationships which sit underneath all the work, and just our lives too, not just the work that we do, but who we are as humans. And then one thing I think that I find, I came up through movement work, in the progressive movement work, and through communications and media. And the one piece that has struck me so much about the last 3 weeks is that we're literally all using the same words, the same phrases about, can't you see my humanity? Don't you care about people? Don't we, like, and there are no sides. I don't usually, I try not to say the word sides because that feels overly reductive and insufficient, but everyone on the spectrum is saying the same things, but we're actually using the same words but speaking a different language, and that has felt really, really hard.
Thanks, Ginna. Stefanie, would you like to share how it's been for you for Slingshot over the past few weeks?
Yeah, I mean, thank you for organizing this, Seth, and to all of you for coming. And I feel like we are all in the same mode of, or most of us, I should say, maybe not all of us, are in the same mode of trying to figure out what it means in this moment to hold the roles that we have personally and professionally. I was telling them, in addition to running Slingshot and managing that board from the professional side of things, I also have a teenager who's a sophomore in high school, and trying to figure out how to have that conversation. And the conversations at home are complicated too. My husband's a Jew of color. I was just saying this to somebody, and it's been very interesting, inside the family conversations too. So it's been I am exhausted. And I think somebody in my breakout room said they thought maybe it was all the 3 weeks catching up. And I would add to it, like, the stress of all of this, right? The heartbreak and the stress of what it means to be doing our work and to be like watching what's happening in the world. And I have one of our staff members whose brother is on the front lines. So that's another layer of complexity. It has been hard. And there have been moments that have just been so incredibly inspiring and beautiful that I think also is giving me sort of energy and strength and hope for where we go from here. But I think we're all being tested right now, right? Not like in our leadership and in our capacities for holding complexities and people and navigating all of this.
Thanks, Stefanie. Can you actually, I'm going off script. Can you share something that has been inspiring to you over the last week or a few?
Yeah, I have to say, so the Hirsch Goldberg's mother, for those of you who've been following the Bring Hirsch Home piece, he's one of the kids who was at the music festival who was abducted. And his mother was here this week with his father. The parents were here this week to speak here. I'm in Manhattan, sorry. And they were here to speak at the UN. And I watched online, one of my colleagues is best friends with them. And so I've been seeing both online and personally, he's been sharing videos. They left their home in Jerusalem to make their way to New York and were really literally escorted, carried even by their community to their journey here. And then the streets outside of the UN this week, when they came to speak, were also lined with supporters and people who were just there to sort of hold them and the other families and bring them in, and with song and with love. And I thought, like, we're awesome. When we come together and we take care of each other, we're amazing. And that really, like, I've cried a lot. And some of those tears have been in moments like that, where it's just the best of us is coming out,
Thanks, Stefanie. Ginna, actually, I'll ask that. Any inspiring moments for you that have kind of helped you through the last few weeks?
That's an excellent question. I feel like there's been so many little things that have just sort of kept me going, but I'll say a big thing is actually personal, which is that I have a kid who is on a campus that is hot. He goes to Stanford, as you know, Seth.
Go
And
Card.
we've been in regular communication. And at one point, in the immediate days after the 7th, I was like, so like, are you gonna put a hat on your kippah? Like, just like, and for me to say that it's completely anathema to like what I would ever do or be. And he looked at me and he was like, whose child do you think I am?
Hmm.
No, I'm not. And it's been part of a very active community who has sort of spoken their voices, and that made me really proud. So
Beautiful. Thanks, Ginna. Can you share, let's talk just more specifically about how your boards have been showing up. Can you talk about how your board showed up, what your board did or did not do that was particularly helpful for you or for your org?
My
So,
name was to this one. Do you want me to go first?
go for it. You're
Um,
reading the notes. You got it.
So our board is a learning board. In many ways, I would say Slingshot's board is a program of Slingshot as much as any of the other stuff that we do to prepare the emerging generation of Jewish philanthropic leaders. So there's an understanding when folks come onto our board that it's okay not to know how to do this. Like, we're on this journey together, which in many ways I think serves us in a moment like this, because there's no posturing. None of us know what we're doing in some ways around this, right? Like, Slingshot has always existed as an organization focused on North America. Like, that is part of its founding language that predates my even working here. And so 3 weeks ago on October 7th, when this happened, this is an issue that we deal with. We had already been realizing for completely different reasons that to be working with this demographic on some of the issues we're working on, that like we had to figure out how to hold space for these conversations and to hold nuance around it. And on October 7th, we just, without like, it was a non-issue. We needed to put something up. We were, heartbroken about what we were seeing. And that was before we knew what anybody's response would be, or any of the protests would be about, or by whom, right? Like we just we're sharing heartbreak. And I'll share also my board chair's grandmother was a Holocaust survivor who died earlier this year, who was really beloved beyond her family, a lot of us. And so I think for her, I'm like watching the news all day Saturday. She called me Saturday evening after Shabbat, and we were like on it, like, okay, well, obviously we're going to say something, put something. And for us, there was no like emailing a statement out, because our folks consume their information really more on social than anything else. So the executive committee was available, quickly turned around. We like drafted something. I sent it to them. They said that they approved. We posted it. People shared it. It was like in the midst of a heartbreaking moment, they actually like really showed up, and they've been showing up. I don't know that I could say what do I wish that they had done that they didn't do. They've been really like so thoughtful. They've shown up when we've asked them to. They've turned around feedback for us quickly. I'm dare I say, proud of them and really grateful to be working for them, because it feels like we're very much in sync and trying to figure out what it means to be leaders right now, and how to hold all of this. I don't know. Hopefully that's.
Thank you. No, that's great. That's great. Thanks, Steph. Ginna, how about for your boards? How have your boards showed up? What was particularly helpful that they've done?
Yeah, such an interesting question, because for me in particular, because I serve on a number of boards whose membership is comprised of a range of people, identities, and how they approach the work, and just orientation to what a board is supposed to do. So I'll just name you named Women's March and Bend the Arc, because those are my two places where I am the chair. And so, in fact, those two have consumed a lot of time, but like, it's not visible to the outside world, because I feel like half of the time, 80% of what I'm doing is keeping something from becoming a thing. In particular for those two organizations, Bend the Arc, which has had a very strident and clear third rail on international issues, particularly, and not necessarily particularly, but Israel-Palestine, but because of the work that we do in the Jewish community has felt particular, that boundary. But then also Women's March, as we all know, had a troubling and challenging history with anti-Semitism. And so, for us, for me, what I think all of the boards, and I'm on other boards, and Stefanie, you mentioned a statement writing process that sounds like the easiest fucking statement writing process that I've heard about for the last 3 weeks, because every place I know that was producing one was hemming and hawing and ripping their hair out and reaching for the bottle, and like all of these things were happening as a result of trying to use words. Again, going back to the fact that like we're all using the same words, but we're not all necessarily speaking the same language and saying the same thing. So for me, I think in many places, our role, my role, our board's role has been to help organizations balance the urgent versus the important, and really keeping their eyes on their own organizational prize. Like right now, you have to be able to both trust the staff with their knowledge and expertise and their skill set and their relationships, but also creating space for some balance there, and recognizing that we're not always going to be our best selves in a moment of crisis. Also, I felt like part of what my role has been to interrupt a crisis response that lets people's outrage and their grief interfere with their strategy. It sounds a little cold and callous, but that's been part of my own compartmentalization, is being able to think about my role as a fiduciary and my role as someone whose job it is to maintain the health and safety of the organization. And so like that has meant also guessing, second guessing, and triple guessing everything, because we're not all going to be in good decision-making shape. And so us being that for the staff has been really, really important across all the organizations when the staff has expressed a need for that. And I think the other piece is when the staff expresses a need, trying to give it to them. When my ED at the Jewish Social Justice Roundtable was like, this morning, I've been doing my thing and I actually don't know what else I need, then helping them figure it out. So I said, hey, listen, keep this in our little Zoom cone. This is not super confidential, but like, I was like, Abby, why don't you close every Friday at 11? Like that's something because rest is the thing. Because none of the other stuff is really gonna give people some rest, give people some time back. That's something you can do today. And that also gives you that back too. So being responsive and listening to folks has been really important.
Beautiful. Thanks, Ginna. I just as a side note, recently did a lot of research around sabbaticals. And for those in JSP land, we're talking about that. And if there's one through line, right, rest is resistance, rest is liberatory, rest. There's a counterintuitive notion that if you're resting, you're not working. But right. The more that we work, the more we burn ourselves up, the more likely we are to burn out, the less likely we are to make smart strategic decisions. And so yeah, we all need some more rest. So I appreciate that, Ginna. You started talking about putting out statements or how and how to do that, or how to do that. I know that's one thing that's on everyone's mind. Jewish Studio Project didn't put out a statement, but we put out a kind of a message, right? And kind of doing our the work that we're doing, kind of creating space and the creative process. I'm wondering how each of you have navigated, how do you work with your board to put out a statement? or what is the board's response again to something like this? You know, whether you're directly in, you know, do work in Israel or surrounding kind of, you know, adjacent spaces or not. And I'm curious your thoughts just around board statements or organization.
Yeah. I think I am a member of, I think that across my board service, organizations did just about everything. So Women's March did not say a public word. I spoke on stage about it at our women's convention last week, but we did not produce any words. We did not sign on to any statements, etc. Bend the Arc, similar to Jewish Studio Project, put out a message to our people. And I think you sort of pointed out, Seth, a little bit of an outdated frame around statements, and myself included, that, you know, like I said, I mentioned I came up through media and comms. So a statement used to be something that went to the press. And it was a thing that went to a distribution channel that was not your own. And you were trying to get coverage of it by other people. But now people don't have to go to that third party, that channel. And so it's a little bit that, you know, our language hasn't really caught up with the reality of communication. And so I think we're sort of, I admit that, you know, being able to say we didn't put out a statement probably might feel disingenuous to folks, because you said something that went to a lot of people that was meant to go to that audience. So, and then I had other boards where the writing process was challenging and was hard, and other boards where there was no board involvement in the writing process, and it was delivered by the staff and put out into the world with, you know, not a whole lot of board input. So it really depends on, it goes back to what I said earlier in terms of the board's orientation to the organization. Each one of those organizations that I mentioned has a way that the board works in relationship to the staff. For example, Bend the Arc is going to be like really cautious and careful about coming up against that Israel line. And so we were in constant communication about where that line was and where we felt like we could move it, and is it moving, and in real time right before our eyes. And then other boards, Women's March, given the history, I had to be really firm and say, hey, listen, I don't think in this moment in time the juice is going to be worth the squeeze. I'm sorry. Like sometimes silence can be a gift, and I think that's really tough in this moment, but it can be valuable, it can be strategic. And I think that I think that when I think about statements and public communication, I think about relationship being the piece of the puzzle that can help organizations navigate what they're saying versus what they're doing. We don't all have to say something all the time, but we all need to be doing something. And if we can communicate to our partners, this is what we're doing, even though we may not be saying X, Y, or Z, because to do X, Y, or Z would put our organization's ability to do what we do in jeopardy.
Mm-hmm.
These are things that I want to walk people through. I want to do a risk assessment. I want to find out, hey, we can say it, we can do it, but what are we willing to lose or let go or gain or attract as a result? And I think that as board members, we have to be able to be those tactical, strategic minds, particularly in times of crisis.
Thanks, Ginna. Stefanie, how about your take on this?
Yeah, I really love the sort of finer point you put on, Ginna, the difference between sort of putting out a message and putting out a statement. So on the 7th, my board chair called me and was like, we have to put out a statement. And I was like, well, I'm here 8 years. We've never done that. Like, let's just like think this through for a second. What does that mean? Like, let's think about who is coming to us and what are they coming to us for, right? Like, having never worked in this space before, we are not the place that people are going to turn to immediately to find out what to do, right? Like in the hours following, they're not looking to see what Slingshot is saying about the terror attack, right? They're probably if coming to us for community, but they're probably going to turn to Jewish Funders Network, JFNA, UJA, JDC, like all of the alphabet soup. And maybe actually our role here can be to lift those organizations up and point people in that direction. But there's no, like, are we comforting people by putting something out there? Or like, what is the, like, why? And then sort of pretty quickly we got to that, well, this is horrible. This is, I mean, again, and I'll remind you, it was Saturday night. There's so much more information and so much more has happened in the 3 weeks. But on that day, the heartbreak was the piece that and I want to actually just back up to say that in May of 21, when the rockets started flying in Israel, and then there started to be some, I think it was 21, lots of anti-Semitism in New York and LA and at different places around the country, we decided we were going to say nothing. And I had a board member who called me. He and his wife called me and he said, my grandmother was a Holocaust survivor, and she taught me that you never stay silent in moments like this. And I think it's important for us to say something. And there were lots of tears and lots of hard conversations around whether to say something, what we say, his beautiful point, and our sense of responsibility to like hear him and actually like say something. And so I think we had those conversations a couple of years ago. And so this was like a no-brainer. And I think everybody was like, and to your point, like I am incredibly grateful that we put something out on Saturday night and that we had fine-tuned a message that that is what we are, like that hasn't changed. And our feeling that we need to put out a formal statement beyond the message has not changed. The question is, who are we as an organization? How do we react in this moment? How do we hold our people? And that actually for me feels more, and I think for the board feels more important than like, what are we going to say now is like, what is our role right now?
Thanks, Stefanie. I have some more questions, but I know we have about 20 minutes and I would love folks here to be able to ask some questions. And Ginna, looks like Adam put a question. Adam, do you want to say that out loud or riff on that any more than what you put in the chat?
Yeah, really briefly. Thank you, Seth. And Ginna, thank you for what you said, and Stefanie, what you've shared. No, Ginna, my question and curiosity is around, it sounds like though there wasn't a statement, there was work done to fill in the space for people who needed it, for people you wanted to be educated, informed, engaged, on board, et cetera. And I'm curious what that looked like, because I don't think that we've done a very good job of that piece at Urban Adama, even though I think we've thus far a really thoughtful decision not to make a statement.
And so, Adam, you're saying that you also did not sort of have a standalone or formal communication to your community, to your people. There hasn't been an explicit piece of something to your folks.
Correct. And I'll tell you that based on how we manage or don't manage our communication channels, I don't even know technically how we would do that, how we would read. Like, I don't know what our community or our folks would be other than, yeah, we could segment like, well, let's reach out to families who are involved in our youth and family programs, or let's reach out to alumni of our fellowship. But that also was a little confounding and confusing, which probably points to another issue, which is like, how do we curate some conversations? And it doesn't have to be either one big one or nothing at all.
Right. Well, I think the number one question anytime someone is thinking about saying something is, who are you saying it to? What are you saying? And what do you want to be true after you say it? Like, what is the purpose for your statement? To Stefanie's point, the purpose may be because we're just not going to be quiet. The purpose could be we've got to say something, and that's fine for that to be your purpose. And for Ben the Ark, for example, the message that Jamie Barron put out before Shabbat 2 weeks ago was because of that space. Because at Ben the Ark, there is such a clear division and boundary. It felt like we needed to be able to say to our people that we saw them. We needed to be able to say to our people that we understood the feelings and the emotions that they were carrying. We needed to be able to say to our people that we were committed to sort of being in community and relationship, and let that be true. And so for us, that was our purpose. Our purpose was talking to our people. It wasn't talking necessarily to anyone else. It was talking to them to demonstrate that. And so I think you always want to ask and my beloved housekeepers are here just outside my door in case you can hear a little bit of banging and rustling. But I think that's really the questions that I would ask.
Thanks, Ginna. Thanks, Adam, for your question. Other folks have questions, reflections, curiosities about what to do, what not to do, how to respond to crisis.
I have a question, if I might jump in.
Absolutely.
Because one of the comments that resonated with me, as I've always been part of organizations that consider themselves learning organizations. So, and this is an open question in terms of the processes that you're going through to ensure that your boards are learning organizations, and maybe a little clarification on what it means to be a learning organization for your board.
Thanks, Jack. And can you just introduce yourself, Jack?
Yeah, my name is Jack Newman. I'm in Berkeley. I'm a co-chair at Urban Adama.
Great, thanks. Okay, then Urban Adama, you've reached your quota of questions for the day.
I love it.
Thanks, Jack.
So I guess I can start on this one. When I say we're a learning board, it means that for some of the people on our board, it's their first board experience. So we are figuring out together what it means to be Jewish philanthropic leaders. Sometimes we're tackling things that are happening inside of the organization, and sometimes that means tackling things that are happening outside of the organization. And it's really, I find that by calling it that, it becomes less intimidating and people feel a little bit more likely to say what they don't know and to accept the offer, the invitation to sit on the board, because you're going to get to learn what it is to be a board member and sitting on our board. That said, there are plenty of people on the board for whom this is not the first experience, but it sort of level sets, I think, a tone and an expectation for where we're at together. And I would say, I think, Jack, I think you were sort of saying, like, in this moment, what does that mean? I want to make sure I'm yeah. So first of all, I'll say, like, as the CEO, for me, it has meant saying out loud repeatedly, I am figuring this out too. I'm not sure what the right answer is too. We're going to need to figure this out together. We actually just decided we had a board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, fortuitously. 9 months ago, we put it on the calendar. And one of the things we decided to do was to launch a giving circle around anti-Semitism for our folks. And I said to them, like, I don't know what's going to come from this. I don't know what they're going to decide to fund or what they're going to want to focus on, but I'm going to really need you guys to have my back on this one, because so far it's been pretty calm, but this may be something that people find upsetting for one reason or another. And I think they'll have my back, and I think that'll be sort of, and where and if it gets sticky, we'll figure that out together, right? But I think I've noticed with this board on things over the past 8 years that have come up where we don't know how to handle it, if we just actually can say that and like figure out who the people are that we need to be listening to, consulting with, bringing on to share their expertise, we all actually, like, all boats rise with the tide when you sort of, so I don't know, hopefully that is helpful.
Thanks, Stefanie. Thanks, Jack, for your question. Well, oh yeah, Imani, did you have a question?
I did have a question. I was on earlier today with a Black rabbi friend of mine, and who said, we have always kind of drawn really hard lines between anti-racism work at home and IP issues as the third rail, etc. And that this feels like the beginning of a new era where we will now be talking about those things together, or talking about them and talking about them together. Thanks, Seth. And so I'm wondering, from the board role position, if this is a new era, imagining it is, what does that then call us into in terms of our responsibilities, particularly on Jewish boards? And I'm Imani Chapman, she, her, Lenape territory in Brooklyn, and on the board at JSP and Roger Wallace Excellence in Teaching Foundation.
Thanks,
And
Imani.
also been the art consultant, I might add, to our own racial equity journey and transformation. So thank you. If I may, I will just, I hope Jamie doesn't kill me for saying this, but when I came to Bend the Arc actually 5 years ago, to me, it felt like that era was over then. And we weren't ready as an institution for a number of reasons to really begin to reinterrogate that connection, that third rail, that boundary. But we are actually we're setting up some time now to really think about what it might mean to not have such a metal door between those issues. And I don't know what, to Stefanie's point about not knowing the answers in any way, I don't know what's going to come out of that conversation, but I do think that it would be foolish is being generous to describe what it would mean to not interrogate these intersections at this moment in time, particularly for me as someone who is deeply entrenched in justice and progressive movement work. Like, there's no way forward that doesn't include at least asking this question.
I 1000% agree with you, Ginna. Like, we had been trying to figure out, I don't have expertise in holding this kind of space with our folks. And we have been trying to figure out who to work with, who to consult with, who, to my earlier points, like how can we learn from, who can we bring in? And in some ways, I hesitate to say, like, we had the luxury of time, which I don't think we have anymore. Like, I think we're in it. This is it. There is no more waiting for later because we don't have to deal with this right now. It's not pressing. I do think there isn't a single organization that I know of that has not in the past 3 weeks had to pivot in some way and begin to engage with these issues. And so it feels to me like that's going to be true for all of us in varying degrees moving forward.
Thanks, Stefanie and Ginna. Thanks, Imani, for your question. Time check. We have about 8 minutes. Can one of you say a bit more specifically what these issues are for you?
I'll give the shorter answer. I think mine might be more with us. For the young progressive Jews who are involved with Slingshot, who are showing up in secular spaces outside of the Jewish community, we have been hearing that it has been difficult for them to show up in those spaces as Jews while they are still trying to figure out how to hold the both and of like maybe being Zionist. Is that what they're going to call it? Right? Like, they're really trying to figure out what that means, or at least loving Israel, if we don't want to put a term to it, and noticing it's it holding an important place for them, while also feeling like on any of the other progressive issues, I mean, right? Like any of the other equity issues, any of that, whether we're looking at like land or people or both, or right. How do you hold both of those? And sort of like find a place to feel authentic and true to all of the pieces of your heart. So I think that's, Adam, what at least what I mean is sort of helping, like, that is going to mean for us trying to help those folks hold those spaces to be authentically their Jewish selves and authentically themselves in social justice spaces outside of the Jewish world. And now even maybe inside becomes even more challenging. I guess we'll see.
That part, Stefanie, I think what you just said at the end, where you said, and in the Jewish community, because what I have seen in the last 36 hours within the Jewish community in various places is like oh my gosh, like it is, we are watching happen what we predicted would happen to the progressive left anyway, if the right got their way. And we're watching it happen within the Jewish community. And like, that's just like icing on the cake for Christian nationalists, right? And would be fascists and folks who recognize that actually stateside, we have Black trans women to protect, we have queer kids to protect, we have voting rights to protect, and those efforts are actually in jeopardy now because of the rupturing that's happening both in progressive movements for justice and within the Jewish community and within Jewish justice movements too. It's happening like on, multiple axes, and it's really, really tough to watch.
Thanks for lifting that up, Ginna. Stefanie, are you gonna add on?
Only that I have spoken to a number of colleagues who are running or involved with amazing social justice organizations in the Jewish community who are like in tears, right? This is just such a hard moment. And so I felt like I just wanted to like say that and bring that into the room. It has been an impossible time, particularly for the people who are trying to hold the both end, who are like deeply committed to their Jewish values and humanity.
Thanks, Stefanie. And thanks, folks. I know, folks, we're getting to the top of the hour. There's one, Phyllis and Sandy, this was a great question. Do you want to take yourself off mute and ask?
Sure. I'm Phyllis Arnold. I sit on the board of JFREG. And it actually kind of carries through the last couple of comments from both Ginna and Stefanie about the chasms, the ruptures in the social justice world, in the Jewish left. And that's whether boards, we as fiduciaries to each of our respective organizations, and in some ways as fiduciaries to movements, to the extent we're not assuming one and the other, have any role to play to help translate these same words into similar languages, to help forestall the consequences of these ruptures.
Me,
We're not.
I mean, honestly, it's like, yes, but I mean, it depends on who your board is and what they do, for example, and who they are. I think that if you have a board of folks who are actively and deeply involved in allied communities, then they absolutely can be a bridge builder, potentially like on the ground, one-to-one, which is unfortunately for us kind of how we're gonna get things done. And like research has indicated that one-on-one is the way to change people's minds as well, right? Deep canvassing is actually how you move people along, the methodology behind that. And we actually don't have a lot of time to do one-on-one. So to the extent that we can, I think, incorporate like a train the trainer model, like deploying our board members to each board member, who are your people outside of these people that we're with right now? Can you be that intermediary? I think also, I'll just name, and I know there's some philanthropists in the room today, that one piece about this division that really keeps me up at night is where is the rifts within and across the Jewish community, what impacts that will have on the funding of movements for justice. And I'm thinking about that. So if you're someone who has relationship with decision makers with funding, like I think it's going to be important to communicate that we have lives to save here. We have work to do here, and we can't let the impacts of, we have to really try hard. And this seems really kind of cold and tactical, but like election day 2024 is a year away. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I know this is a C3 space. I'm just going to say that. And put that out there and then shut up, because I know we're at 12:59.
Thank you, Ginna.
Can I just add one thing to that, which feels also important to say, which is, the three of us were talking just before we got on, depending upon what board you serve on and what the pain points are for that organization. I think that the professionals are taking a lot of heat when there is heat directed at an org from funders and from board members of other places. It would be great to go peer to peer on some of this, and to sort of help the professional that's running your organization, if they're taking heat, to sort of like, if they're getting it from a funder and you are supporting an organization, to pick up the phone and speak to the funder directly, to sort of try to have their back, and to, like, let's not have all of the pros take all the heat if it's possible.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Folks, we're at the top of the hour, so I just want to thank Ginna and Stephanie, you both especially, and everyone else for your time. My closing thoughts are just to be in touch, to show up. If there's anything we can do, is show up for your board, show up for your executive, show up to your community, reach out to your CEO and see how they're doing, reach out to your board members and see how they're doing, build relationships, impact moves at the speed of trust. And I think there's a lot of trust to be built. I wish you all, continued safe and soundness, and to have a restful weekend and a Shabbat Shalom. Well, thank you all.
Thank you, Seth, very much.
Thanks,
Shalom,
Steph.
everybody.
Stephanie and Ginna, really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank
Much
you.
love.
Thank you all.
so much.
Thanks, Seth.
My pleasure.